Hello, Juno community. Welcome to the very first Juno Communications project walkthrough, where we will be interviewing new and upcoming projects that are being built on Juno. I am pleased to share today that we have Stefan from Orbem Wars joining us to talk about their new project launching on Juno. First of all, Stefan, thank you for coming on the show. We are excited for the game walkthrough and ask a few questions about the project. But before we get into that, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite. Awesome, and an honor to be the first on this hopefully lengthy series that you'll be producing.
Excellent. Likewise. Before we dive deep into it, would you mind explaining what you do on Orbem Wars and how you ended up getting involved?
Yeah, of course. So I'm, I guess, the project lead, although we don't really go with titles at Domerium Labs. I've been doing game development on and off for about 18 years now, and that resulted in me creating also a YouTube channel about 4 or 5 years ago where I teach other people game development. I also spoke at a couple of game conferences, shared some of my knowledge there, especially on multiplayer games. And about, I would say, 15 months ago now, I came up with the idea like, well, let's combine some of my passions with crypto gaming. I'm a business engineer by trade, so I also kind of know how a company is supposed to be put together. Let's combine all that and let's start my own indie game studio. And let's build an NFT game in a way that nobody else has done before. And that's basically where Orbem Wars got created. The moderator at that time of the game development community that I run was super excited to join that as well. So he became the first team member, and very quickly after that, we had a third team member, also from my game development community for the art. So that's sort of like how the team got together and my background and how this project started.
Fantastic. And you talk about the overall mission for Open Wars?
I would say like the primary mission and what always will probably remain our North Star, our compass, is to make NFT gaming accessible for non-crypto gamers. So people that don't yet have Juno, don't even have a wallet, that, it's hard to imagine it, but have never even heard of Bitcoin. To get those people on board and basically let them play a game and without even knowing it and without having to jump through all kinds of hoops, let them play an NFT game and onboard them into, Cosmos and Juno specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's definitely the way to mainstream adoption, right? We need to make crypto so easy to use that people don't even realize what they're using, and it's just a nice product. Now, obviously, if you want to get the gaming communities in it, developing a fun game is the most important aspect. Can you walk us through the gameplay a little bit? Like, what will Orbem Wars be for the people that never heard of it, and how will the gameplay feel?
So it's a tower defense game. So I think a lot of people that are into gaming are familiar with that, but we've taken it a little bit of a more serious route, I would say. So instead of going super casual, which kind of makes an NFT setting quite difficult, we went with very strategic. So the towers have a lot more elements to them, like tracking, transversal velocity. If things are too fast, your towers will simply miss. You got things like jamming and boosting. So there's a lot of elements and a lot of strategy in that regard, where you have to pick your towers tactically and also place them tactically on the battlefield in order to basically utilize their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses. And so that is, I guess, one part of tower defense, of course, where it's probably going to be different than other games. And then the next part, which I don't see a lot of tower defense games do, is we implement a full PvP mode, where basically you play not tower defense, but tower versus tanks or tanks versus towers. And one player basically takes the tank side, which gives a whole new dynamic to tower defense. And yeah, it's up to the player whether they want to engage with that, but I think it's going to be a very popular game mode.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely very, very new. Never heard of a PvP tower defense game so far. How will the player that plays the tanks actually play the game? So can he then pick which tanks he's sending, or how do I need to imagine that part?
Yeah, that's like one part that we have not fully developed yet. That's also not in alpha yet. But what we envision right now is that we'll probably get like 3 or 4 or 5 waves. That every wave, both players get a certain amount of action points, and each tower, depending on how strong that tower is, we got different classes, light, medium, heavy, may take a different amount of action points. Same for the tanks. A light tank will be less action points. A heavy tank will be more action points. And you can basically, basically select what you want to go onto the map in that particular wave, and see how that impacts the player, see what the other player is placing in terms of towers, and adjust accordingly in the next wave in an attempt to beat them.
Awesome. Sounds super fun. Now, a question that we didn't have yet is the game on mobile or is it a computer game? And is it like a deep game where we have to sit down for a long time and think about, or is it like I can grab my phone and every day play 5 to 10 minutes in the bus? How does that work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and definitely something we keep in mind in our design. It's definitely a cross-platform. So right now we have a Windows and a Linux client during the alpha and beta stages, because the more platforms you introduce during testing, the slower the development, because you got to fix the bugs for everybody, which you otherwise only have to fix for a limited number of platforms. And we plan to extend that to Mac OS and Android. iOS is questionable, and we're going to have to wait until the Apple versus Epic Games lawsuit has been concluded in 2023, because we're basically making the same violations as Epic Games did with Fortnite, and that's why Fortnite was, of course, pulled from the Apple Store. So it would be a shame if we invest a lot of resources there only to be, rejected in the market. That would be a shame.
Stefan, now would be a good time if you would like to share a little walkthrough of the game, if possible, please. I'll just
of course. And then I'll answer that other question as well. Like, can you play it in 5-10 minutes? I think that's perfectly answerable during a presentation. This probably goes black for a second, and then it should pop up. There we go. So this is basically the main menu where you come in, and I guess we'll just go ahead and play a map first. I'll play something fast. We got a couple of game events right now in alpha. We got the campaign and the contracts. The contracts are basically sort of mini events. We got one coming up this weekend. Regretfully, people that are watching this are probably not going to be able to join anymore, because this video probably drops after the weekend, where you have your ranking and you can win some rewards, and those are, of course, NFTs. So in the campaign, we have the constellation of Ian. That's where the game takes place. It's a pocket of space with 6 stars. You can visit all these stars. There's going to be a total of 30 planets, and you can visit each planet. Now, each planet has a clearance level, and it's basically the difficulty. So you can start off with some easy tanks, 5 waves, and as you progress through the planet, you get more waves and you get stronger enemies. So let's play something on, I don't know, you want lush forest or you want a volcanic map? You can choose.
Let's go volcanic.
Volcanic, there we go. So you start the game, and it works very similar to other tower defense games. You get a starting budget in credits you can spend, and for every tank you destroy, you get more credits. You can change your towers if you want to, so you can, there's sometimes some random storms happening as well. Won't go into that now. And basically you start building your towers as you would normally do. So this is a Vulcan cannon. It's fast, it tracks fast, it's great against light tanks, but does very little armor penetration. It doesn't really help you against heavy tanks. The railgun is like a medium tower, so more armor penetration, but not that great at tracking. And the missile launcher will be even worse at tracking. So right now I don't have enough money to upgrade this anymore. I'm not sure if you can hear the sounds.
Not yet, no.
No, that's probably not coming over in the stream, but there's of course sound effects with missiles and stuff like that. So we can also speed up the game, especially if you're a little bit better at it. Then speeding up is something we expect a lot of players to do. And then basically it's a matter of upgrading your towers. The towers have 3 tiers, so you can basically upgrade them, make the most out of certain positions on the map. And as you progress through the stages, it's going to get more and more difficult.
Amazing. It's so Command and Conquer-esque. It just throws me back
we
to my
hear that a
childhood.
lot. We hear that
It's
a lot.
brilliant.
So, you can probably imagine if you're on the bus, it's quite easy to just take this game out and play one map. There's no problem. A map takes between 4 and 8 minutes on average, depending on the difficulty, depending on the map. And this one, let's put some big missiles on that one. But when you're really sort of preparing your armament, preparing your loadout, looking like, did I find better towers in my loot? Then probably you have to spend a little bit more time comparing the stats, maybe analyzing what kind of enemies am I expecting to fight, which towers have good synergy together, because you can only bring 5 towers in a match, and we'll be having, once we have mainnet launch, probably 12 towers. So you have to choose which towers am I going to bring. So there's quite a lot of strategy behind that. So I imagine sometimes maybe you'll spend 30 minutes to make some sort of tactical decisions. And then there's moments where you say okay, I got my loadout, I'm on the bus, I just want to play a match. Or I don't know, you hear some bad news about FTX and you just want to, crawl away in a corner and not think about crypto, then you can just start it up and you don't have to look at the charts for a moment.
Awesome. What's with the tanks? They have different classes themselves. Do I find different races on different planets that I need different towers against? Or how is that process of deciding which towers are good for certain maps?
So, well, these are 2 spider tanks. These are heavy tanks. And we provide an in-game knowledge base for players to find out what are the type of tanks that I'm encountering. I think I'm going to win this one. So I'll show you the knowledge base in a moment. So it's basically you get a victory scheme, you get an overview, you can see the hit rates of your towers, what you killed. So you can also get an idea if your tower is missing a lot, you get the information in the report to basically make a decisions oh, this tower apparently doesn't do so great on this map, or this tower doesn't do so great against a certain type of enemy. You get some loot. We can go into the rarity of the NFTs and all that stuff a little bit later. You can deconstruct them for research parts, which are going to be important for the laboratory that we're developing. And let me show you in the knowledge base. We basically provide you, for example, with that Wanderer, that spider tank. So you can see that it has a lot of kinetic resistance and even more energy resistance. So you can immediately see, okay, so I better use kinetic-based weapons, and I better use something that has a lot of armor penetration, because this tank has a lot of armor, comparing to a light scout tank, which only has 13 resistance. Now, if you look at the towers, you can see that, for example, Vulcan towers, they have very little penetration, 8 to 12. So they're great at countering these light tanks. But yeah, if you want to kill these spiders effectively, you better use a missile launcher which does kinetic-based damage and does 52 to 64 armor penetration. So you have your different classes of tanks and your different classes of towers, and they mostly impact or revolve around armor and the penetration of armor to determine which ones are good against which ones.
And I can see before I start a map which kind of tanks I'll face on that map, or
that's something that we're gonna be working on. That's something that we got feedback during this alpha. So right now, when you're about to run a map, you see the possible loot that you can find. So you can see I can find Vulcan cannons and I can find projectile upgrades. Probably we'll add another section here where it says common enemies or scanners or scouts discovered this enemy, so that you get a preparation of what you're about to encounter. And then you can still change your towers just before you start the map. So that should result in a decent flow for players where they don't have to constantly go back, because that's annoying.
Yeah, that sounds much more user-friendly than starting up the map, seeing, oh fuck, I brought the wrong towers.
yeah, exactly.
And then restart it again with the new towers after. So yeah, sounds great. Now the towers are NFTs. So
yes.
How exactly are you using the NFT tag for the towers? And why do you use NFTs for it? Like, what can you do with NFTs that you couldn't do if you were not developing this game on the blockchain?
I think that we would be able to, I'll show the Armory. It's a great background for while I answer this question. I think you could absolutely make this game in just a Web 2 environment as well. What we're really looking for is, there's always, when you play games, and we want to lift Orbem Wars up into a metaverse style like environment in the future. And there's always like, you have the end user license agreement of a game that says like, oh, you cannot sell your in-game items, we'll ban your account, yada, yada. But then you still see all these items on eBay because people are still selling their gold and their items. And it's kind of like puts you in a conundrum. Let's say that you are, maybe not like a professional hardcore gamer, but you just consider yourself a little bit more than casual. And you want to have a go at maybe becoming like top of your guild, or maybe with your guild, you want to become one of the top guilds. Then what are you going to do? Are you just not going to buy items on eBay and then have a strategic competitive disadvantage? Or are you going to risk your account being banned to basically be able to put yourself in the same league as other players that are taking that strategy? So I think current Web2 games, they ban it through the end user license agreement, and they reserve the right to ban your account. And we don't think that's a great solution. As a game developer, I do understand why they do it, because it's so easy for people to get ripped off, scammed. And if you got especially young players, teenagers playing the game, going on eBay, selling towers, buying towers or equipment or whatever, it's very easy for people to meet some malevolent people that say, I'll give you that legendary sword, and you give them the $20 and they never come up with the sword. So I think that is what NFT economies can really provide. It's all about trustless peer-to-peer transactions in blockchain. And I think that technology can be used to basically lift that end user license agreement ban on trading items in the real economy. I think it provides the perfect platform to actually enable that and make that possible. And with this tower defense game, yes, we could have built it in Web 2, but I think it's super cool to experiment with all of that in Web 3, especially once we lift this up into more like a metaverse world where things become a little bit more serious than tower defense and starts to become more like MMORPG-like.
How are you planning? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to ask one more questions about NFTs. And that's, is there any way that these NFTs kind of level up or get power upgrades through the game? And as a player, like I might get a cheap NFT first and can make it more valuable to then sell it more expensively later on to another player, or like this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, but we have not implemented something like that. So there won't be like any leveling up. I think that it's something that I would love to experiment with in the future, but there's already so many dials in Orbem Wars when it comes to the game balance. And the more you add on top, like every single element that impacts competitiveness makes it exponentially more difficult to balance the game, which at some point becomes, like a catch-22 that, you do one thing and then you change unconsciously the other, and at some point just becomes impossible. And you've added coolness to the game, but as a result of that, your game is not cool anymore because, it's not balanced anymore, and then nobody plays it. So we're very cautious with adding too many bells and whistles, and we think we got the right balance now. So we probably are going to keep it like this.
While we're on the subject of, excuse me, the economics of the game, will there be a token? I know it's a popular question around the space, but
absolutely.
Is there a token, and
Nope.
like how will players be able to capture value from the time they spend on the game?
Yeah, let me go back to my other screen here to explain this question. So basically, this all goes back to our North Star: onboard people into crypto gaming. What we want to achieve is that somebody is just scrolling on the Google Play Store, they see Orbem Wars, they're like, hey, let's play that, download it. And we don't want them to ask like, what is your Juno wallet? Here's where you can create a Kepler wallet. It's like, here's your 24 seed mnemonic seed phrase, and now you need some Juno for a transaction. And you can buy Juno let's say it's trading on Binance by that time. You can go on Binance. I gotta make a Binance account. I gotta set my passport to Binance, and I was just trying to play a game. And now I gotta wait 24 hours for my verification. That's even worse than the 1 hour you have to wait on your Steam download. There's just no way that people are gonna play a game like that. So we have created a system where people can just download it, start playing it, and they will be able to get NFTs. That's why the first 2 rarities in Orbem Wars are virtual items, and only the last 4 rarities are NFTs. So we can give some people starter equipment without actually having to give them NFTs. They can get started, they can start looting towers, they can start ranking in events, and as a result, they can start finding NFTs. Now we keep these NFTs and we don't send them immediately to them. We keep them as a custodial for as long as the player wants them to be with us as a custodial. If, you know, a Juno OG says like, no, I don't trust Domerium Labs, and 1 minute after, I'm immediately going to go to the NFT manager, claim it to my non-custodial wallet, 2 thumbs up, no problem, and more power to you. If you're a new gamer, you don't even have a Kepler wallet yet, and you don't feel like exploring that right now while you're on the bus, you know, you don't want to do it on the bus. You probably want to read some research on the internet first before you get yourself into that. Then you can just keep playing, and you can use those NFTs, you can use those towers. Well, they're just with us as a custodial for you. And through that method, we're able to onboard all these people. Now, I get to the answer of your question, will you have a token? Well, no, because if we implement a token, we also have to create utility for that token. And the only way to create utility is to lock certain game features behind the token, which means that people need a wallet, which means they need to go, well, through the entire thing that I just explained. So getting people onboarded into Orbem Wars and thereby into NFT gaming is our North Star. And our entire design process for, are we going to have a token, yes or no, goes through the first question, can we do this while keeping true to our core mission, onboarding people? And the answer is no, so we don't have a token.
Makes sense. But will a player be able to sell his NFT with you as a custodian, or
no,
does he at this point need to make a wallet? If he decides, wow, I just found this super rare tower that is worth, I don't know, $50, I want to sell it right now, then he needs to make a wallet, right?
Yeah, so basically we postpone the moment where you have to go through those steps. We cannot avoid them. At some point, you're going to need a wallet, but we postpone that moment. And I always draw the parallel. I used to play EVE Online a lot. It's a multiplayer game that some people call spreadsheet online. It's like when you start playing EVE Online, you don't want to sit down and create spreadsheets for, you know, your perfect economy or your perfect ship fitting. It's like a space game. But to be honest, like once I was a couple of months into it, I spent like an entire weekend creating a spreadsheet. And I was almost, you know, once you're into a game, once you're hooked, then you're willing to make that effort. And in the same way, if we delay this moment of having to go through these hoops, through these steps, which can feel like chores, creating the wallet and a mnemonic seed phrase and reading what the heck that all is. If we postpone that and we got the player hooked, then there's a good chance they're willing to make that effort, much more chance than when they haven't even played the game yet.
Yeah, and I mean, no one forces them to sell their NFTs if they don't want to do all that effort and they don't want to play the game anymore or don't want to sell it. They can just stop and the NFTs stay in their account. The same way it is on every Web2 game, right? It's not like
pretty much
Web2 gaming when you don't want your in-game assets anymore, they just rot in your account, right?
Pretty much, yeah. We hope not too many people do that, because then we're going to run out of NFTs. But it's possible, and that would make the NFTs more rare for the players that do trade them.
Oh, that's an interesting point, actually. So there is a limited amount of NFTs in the game available.
Yeah.
What do you do if suddenly your adoption would go 100 times more than you think that you can get? Then just the NFTs get super, super rare.
Yeah, so luckily we of course have the 2 base rarities, which are virtual. So everybody is able to get NFTs. Everybody is able to get every single item in the game, just not higher rarities. And then, the NFTs will get more and more scarce. And we thought a long time about, should we make them unlimited run? Like, for example, in Axie Infinity, right? There's no limit to how many Axies there would ever be. There's only limited by how many people are breeding the Axies. But yeah, the way that we've designed our monetization model, and you probably have a question about that as well, so we might as well get into that. It's like, we don't sell any NFT. We will never, ever sell an NFT that is an item, a mod. We may in the future have some sort of like a PFP collection, so you can have like an in-game avatar, and we will probably sell those. But like when it comes to like game items, the actual competitive advantage or competitiveness in the game itself, we will not sell a single one. And we also don't have a token, so we're not selling a token. So then very quick people ask the question, so how do you make money? So basically what we do is we are the custodial of the NFT that you loot or that you win in an event. And then if you want to claim it to your wallet, we ask for a small developer fee. That's basically to cover the minting cost. And, you know, when you, let's say, over your Orbem Wars mercenary career had done that with 20 NFTs, then maybe we profit like $5, $6, $7, $8 or something like that. So we're looking at like cents in terms of like dev fees. And all the items have a metadata field. All the NFTs have a metadata field, whether they are locked or not. When they're locked, the game server queries them and puts them in your inventory. When they're unlocked, the game server will not do that. And the transfer of the NFT is blocked as long as the metadata field locked is true. So basically, if you haven't unlocked it from the game, you cannot transfer it to the NFT market. And then for locking and unlocking, we also ask a small dev fee. So basically, we're monetizing the NFT traffic instead of monetizing the sale of the NFT or monetizing a token sale. Now, how that puts or how that plays back into whether we have unlimited NFTs or not, what this mechanic does, and what we're really looking forward to test with, is it aligns the incentive of us as a game studio with the incentive of the player. Because if ever the NFTs were to become so abundant that they are worth less than the fee to unlock the NFT, then we would be locking up the entire economy. So we as developers are incentivized to make sure that the towers remain scarce enough that you can sell them for more than what it would cost you to bring it to the marketplace. And that is also an incentive for the player. They want to make sure that towers remain rare so they can always get some money out of it. So our revenue stops whenever they're not scarce enough, and the player wants them to be scarce forever. So our incentive for the economy are aligned, and therefore we expect there's going to be much more harmony between our community and us as a studio, because we basically want the same thing. And that is not always the case with other NFT games.
Oh yeah, that's a super interesting model. Super curious to see how that works out.
There's a lot of innovation there, so it's a little bit scary, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Well, I mean, innovation is the way how the best products get developed, right? If you just try to copy, you're never going to be the one who comes up with the big solution, especially in crypto gaming, where at the moment we haven't found an economy that's sustainable and really makes sense yet. So I think the one games that I'm personally interested in are the ones that are actually developing innovative economies behind it. So I love to hear that model, and it's super interesting. One question I have still about NFTs though is, so let's say they get super rare and I just want to play a little bit and don't want to buy, supposedly if they're rare and scarce, then they're expensive, right? How big is the power level difference between those two classes that you can get for free that are not NFTs and the four that are locked behind NFTs? Can I compete with the free or with the non-NFT towers against someone that has the NFT towers?
Okay, so that's where strategy becomes really important. And also, this is the reason why we saw that a casual NFT game would not work with our economic model. And basically exactly the question you're asking, we asked ourselves is like, well, if the game is super casual, the answer would be no. But if we make it super strategic, then player skill can play a role, and you would be able with lower tier rarity to defeat players with higher rarity NFTs. Now, would you be able to, compete all the way? We're probably going to have some sort of like a league system, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond. Will you be able with the free tier get all the way up into like the diamond tier? Probably not. You can't with the free tier beat, 4 rarity tiers higher. But a player that maybe has the 3rd rarity tier, maybe with the 2nd rarity tier that is virtual, with good strategy, I see that your players will be able to beat those kind of players. So we basically leave quite some room or advantage on the table for the player based on their skill and paying attention to stats and what's happening in the game in that particular map to see how they should continue that map in order to be victorious.
Awesome.
Very, very cool stuff. Just quickly, do you think this game will ever go to the metaverse?
Well, we hope to build a metaverse around it. So yeah, I do.
Yeah, cool. Let's get into a little bit about Juno.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Juno and not another chain for your launch?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we started out building on Secret Network. One element that I see as a big problem with NFT gaming, and that is recognized by many NFT game development studios that have gone before us, is that you can use the chain and on-chain analysis to get a competitive advantage in the game. So it was very intriguing to me to use Secret Network and their privacy-preserving NFTs, because it would allow people to not use the chain anymore and keep gaming about gaming. Now, regretfully, the things that we wanted to do with Orbem Wars were not possible on Secret, and we weren't able to get a lot of clarity on whether maybe those futures would be available in the future and what timeline that would be. So we basically had to switch to another chain. We looked at Archway, we looked at Neutron, we looked at Juno, we looked at FMOS. But in the end, I think Juno is, first of all, Archway and Neutron probably have to wait a little bit longer for them to really be there. FMOS would mean that we'd have to port everything to Solidity. And I don't really like Solidity that much. I much more prefer to code in Rust. So yeah, just Juno made a lot of sense because we were already in Cosmos. We already had built a community in Cosmos, and it's just a short step. Now, in terms of the privacy, which are we letting that go? Well, not entirely. Basically, what you need when you're playing the game to use the blockchain as a competitive advantage is information. You need to know, you need to be able to have a Juno address to query before you can determine what NFTs they got, what you're probably up against, and what strategy you should assume in order to win. So basically what we're doing, in the past, the game would tell you, hey, you're up against Lucas. And maybe if I know Lucas's wallet, I will be able to query it. So basically now we're just keeping the information from you, who you are going to be in a PvP match with. And as a result, we only show that once you're past the stage of choosing your towers. So basically we make sure that enough information is omitted or not available till after the stage where blockchain analysis could provide you the competitive advantage. I do think, though, in the future, with more complex games, that probably I would really like it to be some sort of like a ZK snark or ZK proof kind of like solution that we can block information for, even not make it fully private, because that does challenge a chain on a regulatory perspective. But for example, there's a layer 2 building on Ethereum. I'm not sure what the name is right now. It doesn't really get to me, but they're basically creating privacy for like 15 minutes. So for 15 minutes, the transaction is private, and then it becomes public. And that is basically a great way to protect against front running and that kind of stuff, because the mempool cannot be analyzed and you can do some stuff. So a solution like that would allow a chain to remain fully compliant from a regulatory perspective, but it would be a massive, massive tool for game developers and DeFi to ensure that, it's a power up of a blockchain, if you ask me. So I'll be very curious to see if maybe we can build something like that on Juno, and that would really, I think, boost a lot of the options that we have also with GameFi.
Yeah, I've heard of things like such being mentioned in the past. So yeah, very exciting. I'd be curious to see how that pans out. Will Orbem be using Juno as a part of the game mechanics to drive or bring revenue to the Juno chain?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think a lot of games, not even games, apps in general, I think it's not like criticism against them, but they take a lot of value away from the chain if they create their own token, because a lot of value is accruing in the underlying token, but not the blockchain coin, Juno in this case. So because we don't have a token, basically all the traffic and all the value that we generate is probably going to be in Juno. When we're launching early access, we're looking at 3.8 million NFTs. When by the time we're in V1, we're looking at 14.8 million NFTs. Just the minting, the transacting, the locking, the unlocking, the claiming, only that is, of course, generating a significant amount of transactions. And we expect that on the NFT marketplace, the Orbem Wars NFTs are going to be denominated in Juno because we don't have a token. So why don't you just use Juno? So I think that from that perspective, the amount of volume we bring, and if you're, let's say, an NFT trader on OpenSea, you got to have Ethereum in your wallet. How else are you going to be an NFT trader, right? If you see a good deal, you need to have the liquidity in order to buy that NFT. And considering how we look at scarcity with Orbem Wars, I expect that, at some point, probably some traders are going to step in and say like, oh, Vulcan Cannon's only $6. I'll raise the floor to $9 because I think they're going to be worth more 2, 3, 4 months from now. So I do expect that a lot of people are going to require liquidity, Juno, in their wallets in order to do this NFT trading. And we bring a collection that goes beyond any other collection ever released in Cosmos. So that's, I think, a lot of traffic and a lot of economic value for Juno. So I do think we bring a lot of value there.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there's also like Juno it's one of those chains that it can develop NFT marketplaces, and I like the idea with Juno that everyone it's within Juno can use each other's sort of applications or the application, sorry, and sort of transfer wealth around the ecosystem in itself. So it's nice to see everyone sort of intertwine, and it will happen eventually. It just takes time for projects to build and catch momentum. And obviously, the time of recording this, the market ain't too great at the moment, so people are losing interest, which makes me bullish on gaming on blockchain, and that piggybacks into my next question of why do you think gaming on blockchain is any different from just gaming without blockchain?
Well, I think we should get gaming on blockchain to a point where there's no difference anymore. It's simply, for me, you can break through the walled garden principles of Web2 gaming. So one idea, for example, that we have, and then I'm looking far in the future, so don't get too excited if you're watching right now. But far in the future, we, for example, see, Orbem Wars plays in 2083, so like a good 60 years in the future, where, humankind has got spaceships and all that good stuff. So we see, when we lift this up into a metaverse, we see sort of a space simulator emerge. And, a tower that you would place on the ground might as well just be a tower for a ship turret. Or so, at some point we could say, well, the towers that you loot in Orbem Wars, you can now fit to your spaceship while you're flying around and playing a completely different game. And I think that is something really cool, that you can break through the walled garden of one game and you can make game assets part of multiple games. Now, a lot of people, when they hear that, they don't get super excited because, part of gaming is that sense of progression, of getting better. And imagine that you have like Diablo 1, 2, 3, 4. Imagine that you could port your character and all your equipment from Diablo 3 to Diablo 4. It would basically nullify a lot of the game experience, because part of the game experience is, leveling your character up. So I think the challenge is for game developers to look at this walled garden principle of Web2 and see how we can break the walls with Web3, but then we also have to create completely different game designs where that sort of transfer of assets doesn't become a reduction of entertainment, but becomes a completely new form of entertainment. And I don't think we have had the game designs yet in existence. I've not heard anybody talk about how we can do that in a way that adds to the game experience instead of takes away from it. But it doesn't mean that there's not a large amount of innovation possible here that we're probably going to see, being developed over the next 5, 6, 7 years. So I'm really curious to see where that's going to go, and that's why I'm excited about Web3 gaming.
Nice.
Thank you.
So going back to Orbem Wars, how is your roadmap looking? We're seeing you have a playable alpha right now. Some people can already play a tournament this weekend and stuff. What more is to come? What are the timelines? Can you just dive a bit into the roadmap?
Yeah, so we launched Alpha 6.1 last Monday. If you're watching this, like 21 November. And that's like a major pivot for us, because that is where we basically stop developing for testers to test, and we start developing for players to play. So we really made that shift to like implement quality of life features, implement accessibility. Part of that upgrade is a full in-game tutorial, so people can actually get onboarded without having to go to Discord and ask like, how the heck do I start this game? So that's basically where we freeze most of the features. Now it is expanding the universe of Orbem Wars. We currently got 5 planets. Yesterday on my live stream, I built the 6th planet. And basically now we're going to write the smart contracts. Sounds like we're doing that very late. We've of course done a lot of testing, especially on Secret Network. That's not that different than Juno. But creating a game like this is like 99% of the code is outside of smart contracts. It's like 1 million lines of code. And then you got like 5,000 lines of code to write inside of smart contracts. So, now it's time to write the smart contracts to get the NFTs on Juno testnet. Then we're going to have a beta, I would say within probably 2 months. But, don't hold me to that. It's like we might have some surprises because, creating collections of 3 million NFTs may put us through a couple of challenges. But next up is a beta with NFTs on Juno testnet. And after that, an early access, which we basically expect before the end of Q1 2023, where you're going to have the campaign, player versus environment, and the events. And then we're going to be building the PvP game modes. And then probably by the end of the Q2, over the summer of 2023, we're going to have V1 launch, where we have all 4 game modes, at which point we start to expand the universe into probably a different constellation. We got plans for guilds, player alliances. You have things like planetary conquering, so that you get guild versus guild warfare to conquer planets. We have an entire resource system planned, maybe something with production or crafting. So we're definitely going to bring this game up to like much more than just a tower defense game. But for the short term, next like 6 months, it's beta, early access, V1 launch. And it should get everybody playing and trading their NFTs. So super excited about that.
Awesome. How is it looking with the adoption? So at this phase, I think you're mostly looking at adoption from crypto users, right?
Yeah.
At what point do you want to pivot that and focus on getting gamers from the gaming community that have never used crypto into the game?
So I think that we're going to have to let the market inform us and not stick too much to a rigid plan. You're absolutely right that, the easiest to onboard are people that are already got a capital wallet. We did an airdrop to secret stakers, or we still have to do the airdrop because the NFTs don't exist yet. We have to write the smart contracts, but that has been done. We're looking if we can somehow now with our move to Juno fit in an airdrop maybe for Juno stakers. But that's like to be determined because the economic model has to allow for it. So there's probably a large adoption influx from those communities, broader Cosmos community. And then at some point, I always say to everybody, help us out. Even if you don't play tower defense, if you don't like it, when we launch, just give it a download so that the download counter goes up. Because if we want to onboard like non-crypto people, if they go on the Google Play Store and they see 17 downloads, nobody is going to download a game. Like you have to be like a very a connoisseur of tower defense to download a tower defense game with only 17 downloads. But if through the community we're able to get it up to like 10,000 downloads, then that is already so much more appealing for somebody that's just scrolling through the Play Store and might just find us because the Play Store put us in some sort of like ranking list or top 100. Well, that's probably going to be a little bit too early with 10,000 downloads, but and we can do some promotions. We can do some YouTube promotions. That's also a big advantage of our model. We can make a Google commercial, like an ad, Google ads, YouTube ads. You click on it, just goes to the Play Store link. You can download it, start playing. You don't need a capital wallet or anything, and that makes it so much more accessible through the normal Web2 advertisement channels. But every dollar that we put in advertisement is probably going to be worth 10 times more if we have 10,000 downloads already, because we can push a lot of traffic to our Play Store page, but with only 100 downloads there, not a lot of people are going to download it. So we hope for, that push from the crypto community first, and then the Web2 gaming community will come after. And for that, we have a marketing budget.
Stefan, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on today. We'll close that off in the respect of time. just quickly before I end, is there anything you would like to tell us in terms of like community coming to find you guys, YouTube channel, Discord? I will gladly add the links on post-production of the stream.
Yeah, like I'll put them down in the description below. Of course, we got a Twitter. Give us a follow to stay up to date on new updates. We have an itch.io page. Itch.io is a platform, web platform where a lot of indie games are being released. So there you can download our launcher. And yeah, you know, let us know what you think about the game. Give feedback. If you get a bug, don't say like, "Oh, screw this game," but take the time to hopefully let us know so we can fix it. That's what I would ask.
Wonderful. Thanks for your time again, and we'll catch up with the community next video call. Okay. Thank you very much for joining.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.